Here's a quick snapshot of the benefits to you at home from Budget 2025. The surprise tonight, $17.1 billion in new tax cuts in 26-27. If you ignore the government's spin on the already delivered Stage 3 tax cuts, the maximum benefit to your hip pocket is $268 next year, $536 the following. The spending continues with an $8.5 billion record Medicare investment. Labor hoping to increase your access to bulk billing doctors from 78% currently to 90% by 2030. The final big ticket item in this pre-election pitch, 2 more quarters of energy relief, $150 for every household this year. The cost, a decade of deficits. No return to budget balance forecast until 2035 at the earliest, and that's assuming the worst doesn't happen via a range of risks identified by Treasury. They include a weaker Chinese economy, tariff and trade tensions from Donald Trump if he proceeds as planned, sluggish global economic growth, and the ongoing wars in Europe and the Middle East. Finally, let's show you the biggest blow to the budget, the cost of repaying the growing debt. Amid tonight's election sweeteners, interest payments alone on our debt are growing more than 9% annually from $26 billion this year to $36 billion. In just a moment, I'll be joined on the desk by our the Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor. He's just announced that the Coalition will oppose Labor's tax cuts announced in tonight's budget. Here was the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, just a short time ago reacting to the Coalition's stance on this.
It proves once and for all that the Coalition don't support cost of living relief for Australians doing it tough. This is the approach they took when we introduced a tax cut for every Australian taxpayer from July last year. Peter Dutton got so angry about it that he called for an election over it. They have opposed our cost of living relief at almost every turn, and true to form, they're doing it again. And what this means is that if Peter Dutton and the Coalition win the election, Australians will be worse off.
Joining me live in the studio is the Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor. Was that a tough call to oppose tax cuts?
Well, I tell you what we see in this budget is a budget for the next 5 weeks, not the next 5 years. And it's not a hard call to say that's completely unacceptable for the Australian people. The truth is, what they're offering Australians is 70 cents a day in a year's time, at a time when a typical Australian family with a mortgage has had to find $50,000 after tax that they weren't expecting to find, Kieran. So this is a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. It's not a solution to the underlying problem here.
So will you go further?
Well, what I will say is that our focus is on restoring Australian standard of living and making sure we get back to at least where we were when we were last in power. We're down 8% for a typical Australian family on their real disposable incomes, the standard of living. We've got to get back to that and beyond. So Labor's own plan...
Sounds like you'll go further than what Labor's pitched on tax.
Labor's... Well, you know what? What we need is an economy that works for hardworking Australians. And it's broken for hardworking Australians right now. And that's why Labor is having to put Band-Aids on bullet wounds. That's why they're having to do these sorts of things, because they've completely failed to manage the economy. If you want the standard of living of Australians to improve, you have to be able to manage the economy. Labor can't. And that's why they end up having to do these things. But, you know, it's a cruel hoax. This is just an election bribe, 70 cents a day in a year's time. Seriously, Australians need solutions that are actually sustainable and work for them over a long period of time.
It might be a bribe, but, you know, people like tax cuts. And if it's a top-up tax cut, as the Treasurer argues, if you knock this back, surely you'd have to go further, would you not?
You know, I'll tell you what I find people want is they want to be able to have a standard of living that is going forwards, not backwards. I mean, to go backwards 8% in 2.5 years, it's never happened before, Kieran. This is completely unprecedented. And so Labor's answer to that is give them 70 cents a day in a year's time. This is not a solution. And this is what Labor keeps doing. So what are they...
You're not ruling out going further?
Well, I tell you what is needed. We need strong economic management. That includes delivering affordable, reliable energy, more supply into the system, making sure that we fix the housing supply crisis we've got in this country, which means balancing immigration and supply, record levels of immigration under this government. We're approaching 2 million new people in just 5 years. 2 million in just 5 years. The forecasts keep going up because Labor's lost control of immigration in this country. And if you've lost control of immigration and your housing supply is broken, then it's a complete disaster for housing affordability. So getting to the solution, the underlying problem, and solving the source of the problem, not just dealing with symptoms, is what Australians want and need right now.
Yes, but in terms of symptoms, people do, as I said, households that have been struggling would appreciate tax relief, further tax relief. I just wonder how, if you do adopt more generous tax cuts, how do you go around, how do you make the numbers stack up, say, with nuclear and more defence spending and so on?
The idea that the answer to every Australian's problem is the government stepping in has never worked before and won't work. What we need is an economy that works for hardworking Australians. Middle Australia is seeing an economy that's broken for them. The numbers don't lie on this, and I see it every single day when I'm out there. They can't afford to pay the grocery bills. They can't afford to pay the insurance bills. They're struggling to pay the mortgage. And Labor's answer to this is 70 cents a day in a year's time. And meanwhile, you've got deficits as far as the eye can see. It's not free money. Someone has to pay for all of this. Kieran, $170 billion of deficits in just 5 years. That's $6,000 for every Australian. This is how Labor runs the show. And it's a road to ruin, Kieran. It absolutely is. Red ink as far as the eye can see. There is nothing sustainable about any of this.
And the fiscal, the spending credibility, obviously, you see that as an equity for the coalition. So you've got the nuclear plan, you've promised more defence spend. How do you navigate this with the tax cuts? Can you bump them up?
We will have a stronger budget position than Labor's because that's important to beating inflation, boosting growth, backing small business that's getting crowded out by government spending. And we have to, at the same time, fix the housing supply, make sure we've got a balance of immigration with housing, get affordable, reliable energy into our system, and that means in the longer term, zero emissions nuclear power plants, and in the shorter term, getting more gas into the system and making sure the coal-fired generators don't leave prematurely. This is not complicated, but it's all the work that Labor has completely failed to do, Kieran. Yeah. And that's why Australians are worse off. And then they end up having to hand down a budget which has got red ink as far as the eye can see, make no mistake about it, because they haven't got solutions to the underlying problem. They offer election bribes.
And so maybe no tax cuts.
Well, we have already announced important tax cuts, and let me name two of them. One is accelerated depreciation for small businesses, because they need an incentive to invest. When they invest, they create jobs, they drive prosperity, they help to support rising real wages. The second one is we will not be putting in place a capital gains tax on unrealised capital gains. And that is what Labor's proposed. I mean, these are completely inappropriate tax imposts on Australians, and we will absolutely be ensuring that Australians who are running small businesses, who have superannuation where they get capital gains, are not being taxed by a bad Labor government.
Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor, I very much appreciate your time. We'll talk to you soon.